This is Cruise Radio.
I cruise a lot, and I always sail with travel insurance. You should too. Get a free quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Here we go.
Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. This is Cruise Radio.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Doug Parker. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Cruise Radio. Very happy to have you here, my friend. A review of Norwegian Getaway this week, a 7-night cruise to Bermuda. But first, as always, staff writer Richard Sims is on deck with this week's cruise news. Hey, Richard.
Hey, Doug.
We kick things off with some good news for Carnival and why it caused a little bit of confusion for some people.
Yeah, very good news indeed for Carnival, because while many other sectors of the tourism industry are being really hard hit by sort of economic uncertainty, both in the United States and around the world, Carnival Corporation seems basically immune. They are raking in money hand over fist, as evidenced by their latest earnings call. To be clear, they are definitely spending money, with the preparations for the opening of Celebration Key and new ship orders and stuff like that. But they're making a whole lot. Ticket prices are higher than ever. Ships are sailing at over 100% capacity. And onboard spending on things like specialty restaurants and, in casinos and shops is booming. So why were people confused? Well, you may recall that over the past week or so, Carnival Cruise Line, the biggest division of Carnival Corporate, rolled out plans for the Carnival Rewards program. This is going to replace the VIFP starting in June of next year. And it has people in an absolute uproar over this. Their announcement did not go the way they hoped it would. In fact, people have come out of the woodwork to tell anyone who will listen, including brand ambassador John Heald and media outlets such as us, that they are so mad about these changes that they are canceling their cruises. I mean, literally just hundreds and hundreds of people saying, nope, I'm done. If this is how Carnival wants to treat me, if they want to disrespect us like this, I'm canceling my cruises. So that led some people to say, wait a minute, if so many people are canceling, how is Carnival still doing so well? How did their financial report come out so great? Why is their stock soaring? And that's because of timing. The earnings report was for the second quarter. It'll be a while before we can tell if these cancellations have an impact on the line's bottom line, and if so, just how big that impact is. We're basically going to find out, are people putting their money, but really more their cruise vacation where their mouth is? Are they talking a good game, but they'll still go back to Carnival? Or will enough people say, nope, I'm going to try a different cruise line, or God forbid, a different type of vacation? And, they see this as sort of punishing Carnival for the way they perceive themselves as being treated by the loyalty program. So it will take a while for us to see the impact of this, but it will also be very interesting. I mean, I think we'll be very anxious to see the next earnings call, whether, are the ships still sailing at over 100%? Are they still, seeing the massive profits that they're seeing right now? Only time will tell.
In other Carnival news, the company released a statement regarding that Netflix documentary Poop Cruise that rolled out, I guess, earlier this week, right?
Right. So the documentary is part of Netflix's Trainwreck series, which I absolutely love. I highly recommend. They've got like a bunch of them and there's more coming out. This one was called Trainwreck Poop Cruise. And we talked about it quite a bit last week. So if you missed it, go listen to last week's show. I offered up a review, which you can also find on cruiseradio.net. After the review went up, Carnival reached out to various media outlets with a statement. And honestly, it's less about the documentary itself than it is about the incident the documentary is about and what happened in the aftermath of it. Quick rehash for those who don't know. The documentary focuses on a 2012, 13, whichever year it was, cruise on board the Carnival Triumph when there was a fire on the ship that left the ship powerless. They were floating around for 5 days, and that's sort of how it got the name Poop Cruise, because, people had to go through a lot in order to take care of their bodily functions. It was a little bit of a disaster for the people on board, and it was a massive disaster for Carnival from a PR point of view. So it's understandable that they probably weren't particularly thrilled that this documentary all these years later comes out. Anyway, the statement said that in the wake of the Carnival Triumph fire, that there was a massive investigation done by the company, which revealed what they called a, quote, design vulnerability. This led to them spending over $500 million across the fleet on new programs centered around fire suppression, response, and other related issues. At that point, the press release then turned into a bit of cheerleading, with them basically saying that since that incident on the Carnival Triumph, over 50 million people have sailed on Carnival's ships without incident, which, is debatable. But interestingly, they didn't mention that many of those people who were sailing on the Carnival Sunrise, which is the new name of the Carnival Triumph. That's what it operates under now. I also think it's interesting that at least as of when we're recording this, John Heald, who has had the unenviable task of dealing with the public as he is sort of the face of Carnival Cruise Line because of his position as brand ambassador, he has said that he did not watch the documentary. He has commented on it a little bit, but he says he hasn't watched it. I would actually be fascinated to know who in Carnival has and hasn't watched it, because frankly, if I was, Christine Duffy or one of the other people at the company, there is no way I wouldn't watch this, because I'd need to be able to respond to it. Plus, I'd be curious. I mean, let's face it, if they did a documentary saying that, cruise radio went without power for 5 days and you were trapped in the office and you had to poop in a red bag, I'd watch that. I would watch the heck out of that.
And speaking of gross things happening on cruise ships, a couple on board got a little bit of a surprise one night.
Yeah, that's something of an understatement. Pam and Ken Jackson were on board the Marella Explorer 2 when suddenly a pipe above their bed burst and they were just deluged with some very, very, very gross stuff. We are told that it was basically macerated food waste that was going through the pipe to wherever macerated food waste goes. But that it supposedly smelled like vomit. I mean, I get gross just thinking about this, let alone looking at the pictures from it. Needless to say, they were moved to a new stateroom and they were given some form of compensation, although I don't think it was nearly enough. And their belongings were taken to be cleaned. But even that turned out not so great, because a lot of their clothes ended up being shrunk, so they could not catch a break. I have to say that they seem to have been, let's just say they handled this whole situation in a much more calm and pleasant demeanor than I probably would have. You can see in the video, how they're reacting to this. And yes, it's definitely gross and they definitely react. But like I said, much calmer than I would have. I would have been freaking out. So more power to them.
Oh, they must be retired nurses or something, because if it was me,
right?
I would be
they
throwing
must be
up.
used to dealing with this.
Yeah, because I could not do it. Yeah. So turning now to Disney Cruise Line, where it looks like you're going to have to give Mickey Mouse a bit more money if you want to eat at a couple of his specialty restaurants.
That's right, Doug. So Disney Cruise Line, kind of unlike the parks, is really well known for their food, even in the main dining rooms. But people also really love their specialty restaurants. And that is probably why you're now going to see their prices going up. According to allears.net, who extensively cover all things Disney, including the cruise line, here's how it breaks down. Palo, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, and the Palo Steakhouse, Remy, and Enchante will all see kind of a staggered price increase, meaning these prices will go up. Some of them have already gone up now, and depending on what ship it is, they'll roll out between now and November. So how will these prices be impacted? Palo and the Steakhouse will increase their brunch and prefix dinner menu prices by $5, which means you'll now be paying $55. Remy's Champagne Brunch and the Remy Dessert Experience will also increase by $5, so that brings those up to $85 and $70 respectively. The The prefix dinner at Remy will increase by $10, making it $145, while Enchante's prefix menu for lunch and dinner will increase by $10, bringing that price up to $145. I love specialty restaurants. I mean, I don't think I have ever done a cruise. People always brag about doing cruises and never spending any money on food, but I like a specialty restaurant, so I always hit them. But even I would kind of balk at the idea of $145 for a meal on a cruise ship. You can go to some really amazing restaurants on land with, I think you could probably get there are probably at least a couple of Michelin starred restaurants that you could eat in for $145. So I don't know. That seems like a lot. Like I said, the prices will go up based on the ships, and that's between now and November. So if you've got a sailing planned and you want to eat in one of the restaurants, check to see when that price is going to increase on your ship. I mean, if you're already booked, I guess there's not a lot you can do. But if you are still debating when to go and eating in one of these restaurants is important to you and you'd like to save a little bit of money, check and see if you can do that based on when the price is going up on the ship you're sailing on.
And another cruise ship is heading for the scrapyard in the sky.
Well, actually, more like heading to Ghent, a shipyard in Belgium. A recycling company was revealed as the buyer of what's being called the world's oldest cruise ship, or at least the world's oldest currently sailing ship. It's not going to be sailing much longer, however. According to Tradewinds, an auction was held on June 17th, during which a company called Galoo, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, they bid around $230,000 for the Astoria, which was built in 1948 and has sailed under several names since then. I looked at sort of the history of the ship, and to the best of my knowledge, it never really sailed with any of what we would consider the mainstream cruise lines. But it did sail under a variety of names and a variety of international cruise line. It also holds kind of a unique place in history, a unique tragic place, really. It turns out that the Astoria is the ship which slammed into and unintentionally sank the Andrea Doria. We all, we know the name Andrea Doria and we know that it sank. But I don't know that I ever remembered hearing the name of the ship that was responsible. Apparently, the Astoria had a very, very strong steel bow designed for cutting through ice based on where it was sailing, and it hit the Astoria, the Andrea Doria. The Andrea Doria sank. They took as many passengers on as they possibly could, and rescued them, but the Andrea Doria eventually sank. This was in July of 1956. The next stop for the ship will reportedly be a special facility in Ghent, where it will be stripped down and sold for parts, which if you've never watched videos of this kind of thing, I believe it's usually in India, if I'm not mistaken. There's some shipyards in India, or scrapyards, I should say, in India, where they do this. It is a fascinating process to see what they take, what there is value to, and what they just leave behind.
And finally, if you like cruising and shopping, you know exactly where to head. Am I reading this right?
The good news is that this might be the coolest store ever, especially if you're a cruise fan. The bad news is that the newly opened shop is in Shanghai, so it's not particularly convenient. But the folks at Louis Vuitton have designed a 2-story building in the shape of a cruise ship right there in downtown Shanghai. I love this story. If you happen to be a fan of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, you may recall that earlier this season, Jennifer Tilly, the actress she's not a cast member, she's what they call a friend of, so she appears every now and then. And she was a highlight of this season, frankly. But at one point she showed up at a party with a Louis Vuitton bag in the shape of a cruise ship. It was the coolest thing. I want to say I think it was like $35,000 or something, and I'm probably underestimating how much it was. Anyway, one of the things I did not know about Louis Vuitton is that they were very well known in the 19th century. They designed steamer trunks that were specifically meant for sea voyages. So they have a long history with the maritime industry. Now they're opening this shop in the middle of Shanghai. It's 2 stories tall, looks like a giant metal cruise ship right there in the middle of town. It combines elements of a museum, shopping, and there's even a restaurant. There are 10 themed rooms where you can learn about the history of the company. You can actually talk to artisans who have worked for the company over the years. It's a really, really cool experience. But like I said, you probably are going to want to watch about it on YouTube unless you happen to be heading out to Shanghai, China sometime in the near future, in which case, hey, go visit and tell us all about it.
Okay, I take that back. This is pretty darn cool looking.
Isn't it? It's
like,
so
yeah,
neat.
It looks like a cruise ship built in the middle of the city.
It looks like a cruise ship right in the middle of downtown Shanghai.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at places like Dubai and Shanghai, they have some of the just most interesting, sometimes outrageous architecture that you're going to find. But when you look at this, at first I had to find a second source on it because I thought it was a joke. It was in the first place I saw it was the Daily Mail. Which, I wasn't sure. Could it be a joke? But then I found out that the people who broke the story, which makes sense, were Women's Wear Daily. And I know the folks at Women's Wear Daily and have worked with some of them, and they don't run jokes. So yeah, I really look forward to somebody going over there and shooting video. It's opening, I believe it's open limited right now, but it will open to the public on, I believe it's June 28th, if I'm not mistaken. So, feel free, go over there and let's get some reporting on this. Doug, why don't you go over and do a story on it?
I was at Disney in Shanghai last July, remember?
I have always wanted to go there. I think that looks like of the Disney parks, that's just looks incredible. It's so different from everything we have here, but they didn't have the Louis Vuitton ship. So now you have a reason to go back.
Yeah. Yeah, if I can write that one off. All right. Well, staff writer Richard Sims, as always, thank you, my friend.
Glad to be here, Doug.
The world is constantly changing. Your place for news is still the same. Online and on demand at cruiseradio.net.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
Have a tip or a lead on a news story? Let us know. Email tips@cruiseradio.net.
Tony just returned from a 7-night cruise aboard Norwegian Cruise Line's Norwegian Getaway, a ship that's about 11 years old or so at this point. It was a Sunday to Sunday cruise down to Bermuda. He joins us on the line to talk all about it. How you doing, my friend?
Good, Doug. How are you?
Give me some pre-cruise thoughts. What made you want to take this 7-nighter to Bermuda out of New York?
So it's very convenient for us. We live in southern New Jersey, outside Philadelphia. So it's no flying or anything. We just drive up or take a shuttle up, and we're there. And we booked this cruise about a year ago. We were on actually its sister ship, the Breakaway, out of Miami last year on a Caribbean cruise. And while we were on there, we're regular Norwegian customers. So we booked it, a year ago, and then a year later, we were on the sister ship, the Getaway, out of New York.
I see in my notes here you took a shuttle from Jersey into Manhattan to Pier 88. Was this one of those group shuttles, or was it a family sailing, friends sailing?
Mostly an extended family cruise. There was 10 of us all together. It was kind of an eclectic group. I have a really good relationship with my ex-wife. So it was me and my 2 kids, my ex-wife and her current husband, their 2 other kids, and my dad and his lady friends. There was 10 of us all together.
Mixed bag there for sure. So
Yeah.
you get to the cruise terminal there, Pier 88. Is that it?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you get to Pier 88. How was the embarkation process? Because that terminal is sometimes known for being a little bit of a disaster, but the times I've been there, it hasn't really been that bad. What was your experience like?
No, I think it was well organized. We've been to many, we've gone out of many different ports. Like I said, recently Miami. Certainly Miami is a much busier port, so it has a lot more resources there. But the New York port was great. We had an 11:30 check-in time. We were running a little bit late. We got there about 11:45, and I would say by 12:45 we were walking in and grabbing lunch.
Now, I know in this class of ship, like I would ask you your first impressions, but you're kind of walking down a little hallway, then you make that 90-degree turn, and then you get to experience the ship. So once you're like right there in the atrium, I know you've been on the sister ship, but what were your impressions of Getaway?
Actually very familiar. It was like going back home. We felt at home there. It was very comfortable. Same impressions we had on Breakaway. Nice big atrium area. Got the Starbucks right there. You got everything you need. It was perfect. We got in. We did our scanned our cards for the safety stuff, walked over, did a little walk around, and then went to taste and had lunch.
Is the digital muster drill, is that something that the cruise line, like NCL, is now pushing you to right when you get on board, saying, hey, go over here and take care of this right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So when you check in online, you're kind of forced down a path before you're fully checked in to watch a safety video. Mm-hmm. But as soon as you get on, matter of fact, they're directing you based on your muster station where to go. So you're not wasting any time. That's the first thing they want you to do when you go on a ship, and we certainly did that right away.
So what kind of stateroom did you book for this 7-night cruise, and what were your thoughts of it throughout the voyage?
Yeah, we booked a club balcony, which is their little elevated balcony on a Norwegian product. We loved it. We picked it because there was 4 of us in a room, myself and 3 teenagers. So, we needed the extra bathroom space and things like that. And it was great. We typically pick that category room. We had the same category last year on the Breakaway. And it was a little more spacious, a little more room to move around. And we were on deck 8. Right where everything is, right where the waterfront is, a lot of the restaurants and things. So we were like deck 8 forward and had a great time there.
Did you find that there were I guess my first question is club balcony against regular balcony. What are the major differences?
Not significant. I would say the bathroom is the biggest difference because there's like a double sink in there. There's a little bigger shower. It's kind of like a little bigger. I'm a bigger guy, so squeezing in a little tiny shower is sometimes tight for me. That the shower is a little bigger, and there's a little more square footage in the actual living space itself. So it's a little wider when you walked in, because we had like the bunk down from the top, and as well as the bed spread apart because we're all 4 individual people in there, and it just gives you that little extra space. We also got upgraded to a little bigger balcony. So the balcony was like towards the front of the ship, kind of when the ship kind of goes wider or kind of goes out on an angle. So the balcony was a strange shape, but we actually had 2 lounger chairs out there as well as a table and 2 small chairs. So the balcony was bigger in this particular class.
Was it one of those?
Not typical for the club balcony, but the particular class had that feature.
Was it one of those balconies that, I guess, what do they call it? The bump out there where it kind of protrudes out a little bit, where you can see down the side of the ship a little bit either way? Okay.
You're kind of right on the corner there where the ship flares out a little bit, and, towards the ocean side. And you definitely get that bigger experience, and you kind of can look down to the aft of the ship and see everything.
So before we jump into the food and all the good stuff there, talk about more at sea. So with your 7-night cruise, how many dining nights were included?
So we had booked this right before that program changed. So we had the advantage of the expanded drink package, to more choices and higher shelf liquor and things like that, but was still contained to the 2 specialty meals during a 7-night cruise. I believe now, if you book now, it includes 3 nights on the new program.
So you said it included the expanded drink package back then with a free at sea. So did they notch that down a little bit for more at sea?
No. So I guess actually what I mean is like when we booked the free at sea, that was typically the basic drink package, but they kind of threw in when they changed the program to the more at sea to the better drink package.
Gotcha.
However, they didn't upgrade our meal package. We kept it to especially meals per person.
Okay. So we'll start here at like one of the I guess we'll call it the main dining room where you have it. On this one in the back there, what do they call that one?
There's a Manhattan room, which is their larger main dining room, and then they have the two smaller main dining rooms, Taste and See.
That's right. So let's talk about like your experience because if I understand correctly, they all have the same menu from Savor, Taste, and Manhattan. So how was your experience dining in those?
Excellent. In fact, we're not big buffet people. We prefer to sit down and eat, even for breakfast, lunch, dinner, if we have time to do it. But service was great. The food was great. There was they typically with their menus, particularly for dinner, they have like their staples every night of typical dishes, and then they have whatever featured items are for that night. And there was always plenty of choice. All my kids found everything they wanted to eat. No problems at all. Service was great, and the quality of the food was good, and the serving staff was amazing. They're just such hardworking people.
How does it work? Like you're like, okay, I'm hungry. I want to go eat in a main dining room or Taste, Savor or a Manhattan room. Are you having to check in, or can you just like pop into one of those, or do you say I want to eat and it assigns you to one?
So if we were planning around entertainment or something we were doing in port, because we had a larger group, they would actually let us make reservations because we had 8 to 10 people. So we would catch up with the concierge, the maitre d' at some point during the day or even the day before. And because we had such a large group, they would let us make reservations for a specific time for that large group. If we were just 4 or 5 of us grabbing something, you would go up there, put your name in and how many people at all 3 locations. And I don't think we ever waited more than like 15 minutes for a table.
That's not bad. So I do want to mention the buffet. You said you don't really go there that much, but when you did kind of breeze through there, how was the food quality, and did it ever feel too crowded to you?
Yeah, I mean, it was crowded, but you could always find a table. I mean, one of the reasons why we don't like the buffet is there's a lot of people and crowded. But in general, if we wanted to grab a snack or something quick on the run, we could always do that. The food quality was good. It was very clean. They kept it, kept things really fresh in there. And you can always find a table somewhere. Again, it might have been a little crowded, but it wasn't like overwhelming where you couldn't get something to eat or anything like that. Okay.
Fair enough. So with those 2 dining credits, what 2 venues did you hit up?
So we did Cagney's, the steakhouse. We actually did that on the second night of the cruise, where we all got together as a large group and ate there. Quality was really good. Our experience has always been very positive in Cagney's. I would say this time around, the food quality was okay, but the service was a little slower. I'm not sure if this was because it was 10 of us at the table and the servers were just going crazy or what. But again, the food quality was good, and actually it took much longer than we wanted for dinner, which made us a little late to a show. But again, you're on vacation, you don't get worked up, but that would be the only kind of criticism I would have about that experience.
A lot of good steakhouses up there in New Jersey and New York and your area. How did this stack up?
I think it was okay. Like it wasn't. I've had better steaks, I guess, in some higher end steakhouses on land, but it was good. It wasn't like it was quality. It was to order as we wanted. I think that I definitely had better steaks, but this was a decent quality steak.
And then what was your second venue?
We actually did the last night before we disembarked. We did the Brazilian Steakhouse Moderno the last night, and that was pretty good. We probably wouldn't do it again. We've done Brazilian Steakhouse again on land many times. This was decent quality, but it just didn't work for our group because it was too much jumping up and down and things like that. We would probably pick a different restaurant. Like we've done La Bistro and others in the past on other ships and had a better experience there. Nothing against the staff, nothing against the quality of food. It's probably just an experience we don't need on a cruise ship.
Now, with the Brazilian Steakhouse and comparing it to when I went there at the restart in 22, I remember there being a fairly large, it's like salad bar right there in the middle. And I almost felt like we were kind of pushed to do that first, almost like they were trying to fill us up a little bit. Is that salad bar still there? And are they still bringing the meat around with the skewers and you have the little thing on the table?
Yeah, okay. Definitely same experience. Yeah, they have the salad bar, which has mostly cold, really good stuff on there. Yeah. Has some soups and things like that. So definitely, if you're not cautious, you could fill up on that pretty quickly before they start, before you start engaging in the meat side of it. But yeah, same experience. You have the kind of coaster thing on at your plate setting, and when you're ready for some more meat, you turn it from red to green, and they keep coming around offering you things until you turn it back over. And again, the meat quality was very good. They're very attentive. As soon as you turned it over, somebody was coming over offering you something.
I'm going to take a shot in the dark here and ask you how the local was, and see if you tell me it's still called O'Sheehan's.
It's still called O'Sheehan's.
Okay,
of course.
Yes. Yeah, I always get that wrong, but how was it?
It was good. We actually kind of made that our last stop of the day, almost every day. So we got real friendly with some of the bartenders and servers there. They were really great. Even some of the managers and stuff would come over and recognize us, remember our kids and stuff like that. So we'd always end our night with some wings or a snack or something there, and hang out there. And there's an arcade there and things like that. So our kids were playing in the arcade games and things like that, where we had a few nightcaps and had some snacks. So we had a great experience, and there was some games going on, basketball games and things like that. So they had all that broadcasting on there. So it was a great experience, a lot of fun.
Before we move on to entertainment, I should say, any other venues that we didn't talk about that you may have popped into?
We did one other night, so we actually paid for a third night for dining, and we went to La Cucina, which is the Italian restaurant, and that was very good as well. We just we probably wouldn't have done that. We just said, oh, let's try it. And we went out and tried that, a couple of us, and the food quality was really good. The other thing that we did, they have a noodle bar on that ship, which is still complimentary. I guess there's a rumor going around that eventually it's going to be part of the specialty upcharge thing. But actually, my daughter and I just went there one night, and we had to make reservations. It is a very small venue, so you have to kind of, if that's something you want to do when as soon as you get on the ship, that's probably something you should look at.
There's a sushi bar around that same space, like catty corner from there, isn't there?
Yeah, there's. I might have this wrong. I believe it's called Wasabi.
Maybe
it's right near Ocean Blue. There's kind of like
that's right.
Couple restaurants pushed together. We didn't go there, and I don't think anybody in our party did either this time around.
Gotcha. So let's talk about the entertainment. You mentioned that your dinner at Cagney's kind of spilled into your entertainment, but how was the entertainment through your voyage?
It's good. We were one of those typical Norwegian people that have been doing it for a long time. So we were kind of getting frustrated with some of the stepping down of their entertainment they were doing. But I would say on the Getaway, they did a really nice job. So in the main theater, they had the first one that we were running a little late to, was like a 90s revival show, kind of a 45-minute hour like review of different 90s music. Great job. The entertainers were really good and did a good job of that. So again, we were a few minutes late, but we didn't really miss much of it. So we had a good time watching that. Most of the adults in the room, except for my father, were kind of that generation. So we enjoyed that kind of music. They also had a Rumors. It's like a Fleetwood Mac cover band that plays in Sid Norman's. Well, they do now, which is a great move. They actually do one of their nights in the theater. So it allows more people access to the show. And basically they play the whole Rumors album and tell a story about the background of the songs and things like that. Great show. That was probably our highlight of the week in terms of entertainment. We had a blast at that show. It was packed. Everybody had a good time. And then the third thing we did, they did another, it was kind of weird, but it was fun to go to. It was like a Broadway review of different Broadway songs, but the Broadway songs were kind of redone to more of a rock theme. So you had like traditional Broadway songs that they kind of updated into a rock theme or to a rock kind of beat. So it was a little different, kind of strange. We like theater, so we like going to see shows like that. It was kind of unexpected, but it was also fun at the same time.
I'll tell you that the Rumor show, hands down, in over 30 years of cruising, is the best musical show I've ever seen on a cruise ship. I caught it on Norwegian Aqua a couple of months ago, and wow, I was blown away with those musicians.
They were amazing. Amazing. In fact, I think in the past, I'm sure you've heard this over the years, it was always tough to see that show because it was in Sid Norman's, which is a small kind of venue. So we were happy that and the kids could come with us and all. It was like you said, amazing show, very consistent. Quality was good. The entertainers were great. Even, it's a good show too, because not only are you getting the vocal side of it, they're playing instrumentally to live music as well. So it's just a really fun show and very engaging.
How is the casino set up on Getaway? Is it a smoking casino with a non-smoking room, or is it flipped where there's a smoking room and a non-smoking casino?
There is, I think they did one of the recent dry docks. I think they did enclose part of the casino and one of those kind of glass doors there. Mm-hmm. So there was like a smoking section. But that being said, you still had to, you kind of, when you walked through there, and it didn't bother me that much, but you could definitely smell smoke when you walked through there.
How were the sea days as far as crowds and congestion?
It was packed. So on the way there, we had 2 sea days. So we departed on Sunday. So Monday and Tuesday were the sea days. It wasn't super warm, so it wasn't crazy. Out on the second day, when we were getting closer to Bermuda, it was sunnier and nicer. So definitely it was packed and on the pool deck. But you could find a lounger if you wanted to. Yeah, my daughter hung out there and sunbathed. She was getting ready for the proms before she went. But yeah, it was crowded, but it wasn't like, crazy, horror story crowded. We went during Memorial Day week. So we left on a Sunday of that Memorial Day week in 2025. And, we weren't sure what to expect. There was a lot of kids, but it wasn't packed with a lot of kids because I don't think in our area, schools still aren't out or just getting out now in June.
Does Norwegian Getaway, does it have, I guess we'll call it like an attraction on the top, okay, right? So Carnival, some of their ships have the roller coaster. Royal Caribbean has like the indoor skydiving or the North Star capsule. And I know some of the newer Norwegian ships have either their go-kart track or that aqua coaster. Is there anything that really like captures attention up there if you wanted to do something during the sea day?
Yeah, so they have the typical water slides and things like that are decent, but they also have like a big ropes course on the ship that's pretty high up where you can kind of walk around on these ropes. It's open mostly on sea days. They don't really open it in port. And they have this thing called the plank where you kind of walk on the ropes course and it kind of extends beyond the deck. So you're kind of over the water when you do that. That's kind of like their big feature in the back, but they have the typical basketball courts, pickleball, things like that out there as well.
Okay. And as far as the ports of call on this sailing, so you leave New York City and your destination, Bermuda, and you had a couple of days there. So once you arrived to Bermuda, what did your week look like there? Or a few days, I should say.
Yeah, so we arrived on Tuesday morning. You can get off the ship. They clear it pretty quick, so you can get off around 8 o'clock. And Bermuda tends to be pricey if you wanted to stay there or just fly there. So a cruise is a really nice way to enjoy Bermuda and spending 3 days there because that's your hotel and your food and all those kind of things. So it's great. So on day one, Norwegian actually has, so just to back up, sorry, most of the major cruise ships dock at the Royal Dockyard, which is the former British Navy base there. They really upfitted that whole area. So a lot of the original buildings are now like shops and things like that. So it's a nice attraction on its own. They have a small beach there. They have a little water park, things like that. But Norwegian offers a free ferry that takes you right next to the ship at the dock there, right to St. George's. So the first day we got off the ship, we grabbed that free ferry and went to St. George's and spent part of the day there, kind of walking around, exploring, shopping, looking at the different sites there. And then we took the ferry back in the afternoon and kind of hung out back at the ship for a little bit, grabbed some dinner. And then usually one night a week in Hamilton, they have I believe they call it the Harbor Nights Street Festival. So they close off one of the main streets in Hamilton and have like a big street festival with vendors and food and things like that and different things. And we took the ferry from the dockyard over to Hamilton, hung out there for the night, took the ferry back. So that was a great experience on day one, just exploring kind of on our own. The second day we were there, we went to Horseshoe Bay, which is like the famous beach in Bermuda where they have the pink sand beaches, things like that. So we just grabbed right at the port there. There's a ton of shuttles and taxis and things like that that'll take you anywhere. And I think they charge us like $7 a person to grab a shuttle that took us right to Horseshoe Bay Beach, and we hung out there for the day and came back to the ship that night. And on the last day, which was Friday, the ship leaves about 3 o'clock. So we just kind of hung out in the port, did some last minute shopping, exploring in the port area. So it was a very relaxing, easy way to explore Bermuda. Bermuda is a really nice, relaxing place and not a lot of pressure. You kind of do what you want when you want. It's a nice way to visit where you're not popping in and out of every day.
And so you're there for 3 nights, and I know we were chatting about this before we started recording.
Actually, 3 days, 2 nights.
I'm sorry.
3 days, 2 nights.
That's right.
Yeah.
You were there for 3 days, 2 nights. And we were talking about this before we started recording here. But if I understand this correctly, you were telling me that the cruise ship casino, it does open at nighttime while it's docked there, but not during the day?
Correct. So I believe, and don't quote me on the time, so I believe it when you're in port, it's closed during the day, and about 9 o'clock it reopens. And it's just like if you were back out to sea, I believe it closes sometime early in the morning, like at 5 or 6 a.m. And then same thing happens the next night. So they are open on the overnight hours, as well as like the shops and things like that on the ship that would typically close when you're not in international waters.
Gotcha. And then did you find, like, if you wanted to, okay, so you were there for 2 nights. If you wanted to grab a resort, not saying, I don't know why you would, but if you wanted to grab a resort there on the island somewhere in Hamilton or whatnot and stay at a hotel, a land-based place for the day or two, could you do that, or did you have to be back on the ship at night?
No, it's a very just come and go kind of situation. So certainly they're scanning you in and out to keep track of who's off and on to the ship. But no, there was no curfew, so to speak, or anything like that. As long as you were back by the time the ship departed on Friday, you're free to do what you want during that time.
And over at Horseshoe Bay, the beach there with the pink sand, I remember going there. This is probably 6 or 7 years ago, but the drinks were pretty pricey out there. Are they still notched up a little bit?
Yeah, we didn't really drink much. We grabbed some sodas and water and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just like being on the beach here, right? They kind of got you captured there in terms of buying. And they also sell some snacks and things like that. We didn't really do much with that. We just grabbed a couple of drinks. It's kind of a one-stop shopping there. So you can rent, beach chairs, loungers, umbrellas, things like that. So when you get there, you don't really have to worry about too much. You just go up to the stand that's renting the umbrellas and things like that. You rent them, and they set it up for you. They tell you where to go on the beach, and you're good to go. So it's a very easy place to go because you don't have to worry about much. And you bring a towel from the ship, and you're good from there.
Yeah, awesome. And also fairly close to the ship too. I remember you was it 10 minutes or so, not if that.
Yeah, 10 or 15 minutes max. Yeah, max to get there. And then when you leave at the end of the day, when you're ready to leave, those same shuttle drivers, again, you're going to pay again to go back, they're just like they were stacked up at the port. They're now stacked up there waiting to take people home. So you didn't really wait. You walked right up, you stood in a very short line, jumped on the next shuttle that had room, and they took you back to the ship. It was very, very seamless and very simple.
Nice. So you make your way back to New York City. How was the debark process?
Very good. I mean, like as everyone knows, they have the facial recognition now through immigration and customs. So we did put our bags out the night before. We got off at the assigned time when they called our color for our baggage tag. Walked off the ship, scanned off the ship, went down, grabbed our bags, and grabbed the porter who helped us get it out, and literally just walked right through, scanned our face on the thing, and went out to the curb, and our shuttle driver picked us back up. Very, very good, very simple, streamlined process.
I don't think I've ever checked bags at Pier 88. So when you're getting off the ship, are you basically, you're obviously getting off the same way you came on, the gangway, but you're walking through the terminal. Are you going like downstairs to the baggage hall? Is that how that works?
Yeah. So the lower level of the terminal, for lack of a better term, is the baggage where they're processing all the baggage, and that's where customs is and things like that. So when you arrive, there's like a second floor. So when you get dropped off, you got to go up an elevator, and then that's where you check in, and the counters are in the waiting area. And then below that is where the baggage is kind of handled and things like that. That's where you exit. It's on the ground floor first.
Yeah, because I remember the first time sailing out of Manhattan, I think it was on Norwegian Breakaway maybe, and we pulled up to the cruise terminal, and I remember I was like, where's the taxi going? Because you had to go all the way back down around 12th and then kind of get up onto the ramp to drop us off. I didn't realize that you're getting dropped off already right there on the ground that you're boarding on, and then you actually have to go downstairs. Yeah, so it was
In the past, I've driven my personal car there, and they do it's New York pricing, so put that in perspective, in terms of parking. But they have the parking situation is very good, so you kind of pre-reserve your parking spot, and literally there's a second deck which kind of is right next to the terminal, and your car is like parked literally facing the ship.
Yeah, I think when I was up there last summer, it was $45 a night, I think, at the pier to park there.
Yeah, yeah. My dad and his friend, they drove up, and I think he was saying it was like over $300 for the week.
Wow.
So
Gotcha.
it is right.
Any first-time tips to offer someone sailing Norwegian Getaway?
Yeah, just have fun. I mean, the crew is great there, so take care of them and be friendly. And I think you get the service in return, a friendly service in return. It's a great ship, great food, great crew. Just go in, have a good time, and enjoy your vacation. That's the best tip I can give.
Was the value there for the price you paid?
Yeah, we did very well. Like we booked it, pretty far out, and we have points and things like that, so we got a pretty good deal on it. We do use the future cruise credits because it is a good value for that. So we kind of planned it out where we got kind of doubled our money where we bought the future cruise credits on a prior cruise, so we used it for this one. So between that and the value of the cruise overall, it was a really good price.
Looking back, what was the biggest highlight of this sailing?
Just be able to relax with family. It was my son is graduating high school, so it was kind of like a trip kind of commemorating that. So we were just hanging out, relaxing. We love Bermuda. It's you don't feel rushed there. With that being there for 3 days, the biggest highlight is not having to overplan. Just being able to relax, think about what you want to do, and Bermuda is very easygoing and very easy to navigate and figure things out. So I think just the relaxing part of that state nature of a cruise.
Actually, I was going to ask you one other thing here. I want to do an insert because I remember now doing the inaugural on this ship in Miami, and there was a show theater called the Illusionarium back then, and I think they've done away with it. What did they put there?
So we actually went to an event there. They run like it's the smaller bingos and some of those kind of events in there when they don't have access to the theater, whatever. We actually went to kind of not an escape room, but an escape game, where basically you kind of just showed up and everybody competed to solve these different puzzles, to open these boxes on their table. And it was just like a fun event. Me and my kids went to kind of an escape room concept, but they have a lot of events like that go on in there that just another venue for them to use for varying events. I know on one of the ships, similar class, I think they just turned into like a movie theater or a dinner theater or something like that. But this one, they just use for kind of different events, and it still has the same theming like that. Like magic and those kind of things is kind of how it's decorated. So I don't think the decor's changed much, but what they're doing in there is just rotating different activities there throughout.
Yeah. And your final thoughts of Norwegian Getaway?
It's a great itinerary. We've been on several Norwegian ships on this itinerary. The ship is amazing, very well maintained, even though it's 11 years old. You wouldn't even know it. It's very well maintained, and the crew does a great job of keeping things happy for everybody and fun, and the ships.
We've been talking with Tony about his 7-night Bermuda cruise out of New York City on Norwegian Getaway. Tony, it was great talking to you today. Thanks for sharing your vacation with us.
Thank you, Doug. Great to talk to you.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,